So the Bombers' updated injury list is out as it is every Tuesday. We're going to have a bit of a look at it in this video and discuss what it all means right now.
Up to win the premiership flag.
If you like the content that I provide here, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm when you do so. It will ensure that you don't miss a video. It only takes 1 second to click it, and it doesn't cost any money. It's absolutely free, so I'd appreciate it if you could click the subscribe button right now. So the good news is there's no extra additions to the injury list. I was hoping that Sam Durham would not be an addition to it. Of course, he did roll his ankle in the game against Brisbane. He played that game out, kicked a goal in that match, but there's always that danger that, they analyse it during the week and it's something a bit worse, but it looks as though he will be right to go. He's not on the injury list. He will, walk it off or run it off over the next couple of days, and that is a good sign, because one thing about our injury list is that our midfield is largely available. We have quite a lot of depth in the midfield, and we bat pretty deep, it has to be said, especially with Darcy Parish and Dylan Shield running around in the twos. So that is pretty much unchanged. So it's good news that Sam Durham is not on the injury list. Who is on it? Well, Jordan Ridley is 4 weeks away. So a lot of these 4 to 6s are coming down. Now Jordan Ridley is at 4 weeks. Of course, he suffered a high-grade hamstring strain a couple of weeks ago. Sardell Hooley is 4 to 5 weeks away. Of course, he suffered his injury in the VFL. It's probably really one of the only midfielders that we've got on the list. I guess he would have been, not 100% to be in the senior team anyway, kind of been in and out, been the sub a couple of times. Of course, as we know, Kyle Langford is 4 to 5 weeks away. Poor old Kyle, he just can't get it quite right, can he? Suffers a 6-week hamstring injury early in the season, comes back, pretty average form. And I sort of felt that, after that 2 or 3 weeks, it feels like to me anyway, when someone suffers a soft tissue injury, they kind of need about 2 weeks after they've come back to sort of just get their form back. We saw it with Caldwell, who was out for a month, played some, so-so football for a couple of weeks and then exploded last week for, probably his best game of the year. And Langford, who I did make another video about earlier today, I said he's one of the 3 players whose performance has declined from last year. But there's reasons for that. It's, if you do a big hamstring injury, you come back for a couple of weeks and then almost immediately, 3 weeks later, you do a quad. So he just can't get it right, and hopefully he can make an impact in those last 6 weeks of the season or so when he comes back. Zach Reed, also 4 to 5 weeks, so some of these 4 to 6 week injuries are down to 4 to 5. That's good. He is going to be back or due back after the bye. Jaden Nguyen, the young prospect that we have playing in the VFL, has done a foot injury, stress fracture actually. These can be quite serious. He's out for another 6 weeks, so that's unfortunate for him. It's going to be, tough for him to keep a spot on the list. Nick Cox is still to be confirmed. This is, once again, pretty concerning for him just with his concussion. Might be season over for him. It might even be, let's just call it for what it is, might even be career over. It might just be one of those things where he just, can't get over these concussion symptoms, which he's had for a long time. And it always is concerning when you got that, to be confirmed next to your name, because they don't really know how serious it is. So I think he probably stays on the list, even if he doesn't play this year. I just think because there's such a high investment in a high draft pick, and if they really just get him right over the off-season, if they can just get over these symptoms, if you can see a doctor and just you never know. I'm not a doctor myself. I wouldn't know. But if you can, just spend the 6 months to get over it and really just have one crack at it next year. If you can just get that last crack at it next year, and if you can't do it next year, well, that might be it for him. But I'd like to see him just have one more crack at it next year. He's still young enough. And but yeah, it is concerning to see the concussion symptoms. Harrison Jones, to be confirmed. Look, I think he was 6 weeks away last week. I've had an ankle injury before. Takes a while. These things, even my ankle, even now, many years later, it still gives you a little bit of problem every now and again. Sometimes it's just these things, they're never quite right. So, you got the best, hopefully you got the best doctors looking at that, and hopefully he will be back before the end of the year. Ben Mackay hasn't got a time frame yet. The reason he hasn't got a time frame for return is because the time frame will become clearer once he recommences running, which he can't do at the moment. because he's got a plantar plate rupture in his foot. So I'm not quite sure how long that takes before he can get on his feet and start running. But obviously you can't run at the moment because you're just going to further damage it. So it is a to be confirmed for Ben, but hopefully that will start to sort itself out. The other 4 injuries are the 4 season-ending injuries to Draper, Hayes, Bryan and Edwards, and that completes the injury list. You know, it was interesting looking at the performance of the team, especially with the lack of tall players against Brisbane. And I was thinking sort of after the match as to whether this actually affected the result of the match. It was something that Fiona mentioned on Bomber Banter. She's got a really good eye for the game and went into some detail about it. She's got quite an impressive channel, so you can check that out. And she was talking that, and it's something I tend to agree with, that this was a performance based on system rather than based on personnel. If you have a look at the way we played, that Hipwood, who was their number 1 forward, and also Logan Morris, essentially had no impact on the game whatsoever. Hipwood kicked a goal, but essentially did nothing, and Logan Morris he either kicked 1 or 2, I can't remember, but he had no real impact on the game. And yet we had no key defenders. So if Ridley and Reid and Mackay were playing this game, would it have made any difference to the result? Probably not. I don't really think it would have. I mean, would they have kept Hipwood to 0 instead of 1? I mean, look, Hipwood had no impact on the game anyway. So I really don't think that those players actually changed the result of that game. I think we got back into the game because our midfield started to get on top and we started to change the way we attack out of defence. We started to, instead of just going straight down the line, we started to use the angles more, go across the ground and switch play and take less uncontested marks. If you have a look at the game against Brisbane, we took a lot less uncontested marks in the second half compared to the first half, and we scored a lot more. We scored a lot more heavily. So I think the result against Brisbane was, and I think that's a good point that she made. I think it's a system-based performance rather than a personnel-based performance. I guess the caveat to all this is long-term, if you've got a lot of these players out that are all in the one position, can that sort of performance be sustained? So, for example, say you take a random team that has 9 players on their injury list, for example, all right, which is quite a lot, 9 players. And these 9 players are spread pretty evenly between players in the best 23 and some players out of the best 23. So you might have 2 defenders on the injury list, 2 midfielders, 2 forwards, a ruckman, that's 7, and maybe a couple of utilities. Okay, that's 9 players. In that instance, even with quite a heavy injury list like that, a team should still be able to adapt and cover it with a good system because they're spread pretty evenly all over the ground. All right, a couple of defenders, and they're not all necessarily best 23 players either. You might have to replace 1 defender, a couple of midfielders, a couple of forwards, etc., etc. I guess the danger for us is, and this is what we're going to find out, and why I'm sort of excited to watch how this team goes over the next 4 to 6 weeks, is how does it go when most of the injuries are in 1/3 of the ground? All right, how does that affect the system long term? And I don't know. I mean, I really don't know because I've never really seen a team ever have so many injuries in one particular type of player, tall players. I've seen teams with long injury lists, but they're spread amongst all different types of players. I can't remember an injury list where it's just all tall players, or nearly all tall players anyway. So that's going to be fascinating to see how we adapt, especially against tall players like Curnow and Mackay over the course of the next few weeks. If you look at Collingwood, for example, they had a lot of players out against North Melbourne, but their system is so strong that it doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter. They look at it as a total squad issue. They've got 30, probably 34, 35 players they could realistically pick from who would be capable of playing senior football, and they can use any of those 35. And if you pick the best 23 that are available out of those 35, they're going to put in a pretty good performance and win the game. I think Geelong is the same. And I think that's what we should aspire to be. And I think, certainly, I don't think that the injuries we had on Thursday night against Brisbane, I don't think they changed the result. I think we probably would have lost anyway, even if Ridley, Reid and Mackay had all been there. So what do you guys think anyway? I think that's an interesting discussion. I personally don't like using injuries as an excuse, but when they're all in at 1/3 of the ground, it does make for a particularly challenging environment. So I'm going to leave it at that. Have a good day, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Like this video, leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Have a great day, and as always, go Bombers.
But they come get near as the